Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heave is gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining.
Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. John Morant. Insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish. On today's episode, I'm going to talk about some of the things that Zach Kleiman said at his post-trade deadline media availability. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the game that was played between the Hornets and the Grizzlies on Saturday. Before I get to it, just a reminder, if you want some bonus content from me, if you want to join the Slack channel of my listeners, you can do all that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. I really appreciate everyone who's joined up over there. We have a very vibrant and passionate Grizzlies community in our Grits and Grinds Slack channel. There also are a bunch of other just general NBA fans in the Fast Break Breakfast Slack channel. If you want to join all that, plus get a bonus episode that I just posted a couple of days ago, you can get it at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. All right. The game against the Hornets, the Grizzlies lost, if you don't know. The Grizzlies now have the longest losing streak in the NBA, seizing that title from the Hornets. The Hornets came into this game losing 10 straight. This game was borderline ridiculous. This game was the first one all year where I felt like our Grizzlies team, they were going through the motions. Now, maybe that's not the case. Maybe they were executing and trying as hard as they possibly could. But this one felt a lot like no one cared what happened in the game. They understood, correctly, they understood this game has no stakes. Maybe that's not how it was. Maybe I'm bringing my own baggage or my own emotional state I was in when I was watching the game. But there's not a lot to really break down from it. Honestly, let's save it. Let's talk about it later. Let's lead off with the Zach Kleiman comments. So after the trade deadline where, of course, the Grizzlies were very busy, they were over the whole week. They traded Steven Adams. They traded Xavier Tillman. They traded David Roddy. They picked up a lot of second-round picks and things. They brought in some players, but, we don't know how much the players are actually going to matter for this Grizzlies team going forward. And so Zach Kleiman addressed the media to talk about the moves they made. He, of course, complimented, Roddy and Tillman, and, of course, as already mentioned, Steven Adams, just for their roles on the team as leaders, as great contributors to the locker room culture, as professionals who do everything the right way, and then for, of course, contributing on the basketball court. I think the most interesting things to take away from what Zach Kleiman said, I think, one, there were questions about the trades and the dealings and how that is going to affect the Grizzlies' luxury tax situation going forward. And I will say, after expressing my own concerns and reservations about what the Grizzlies will do as far as spending going into the future. Zach Kleiman said all the things you want to hear. He said all the right things. He's always said all the right things as far as like this team is willing to go into the luxury tax, and he praised Robert Pera as being a great owner who has not given any kind of budget limitations. So he said all the right things about the Grizzlies, spending when needed to compete for a title, and said that Robert Pera will not limit them as far as what they can spend. Also, he said all the things about we understand we have this window of contention, and he kept saying the Grizzlies want to capitalize on this window. And I think, what does he specifically mean by the window? I would say that one of the windows is that 2-year span we have starting next year, where we have Ja and Desmond and Jaren. These are the 2 years before Jaren has to sign a new contract. So there's this window right now where we hope Ja, Des, and Jaren are all in their prime. And because of the financial limitations that might be in place when Jaren needs his next contract, the next 2 years are kind of like the time to go right now. And Kleiman talked a lot about capitalizing on that window, and also how the draft pick, this year's draft pick, is going to weigh in on that capitalization, and how, the decision tree starts with wherever the draft pick lands. The Grizzlies clearly have a lot of options open to them depending on if they jump up in the draft. Like, they have a decent shot, like a 10% shot at getting the top pick. They're going to be dealing with something like a 35 to 40% chance of having a top 4 pick. And so the decision tree starts there. Where is it? Do we take one of these top players, or now do we package this high draft pick to get someone else we can bring in, someone who we think is very, very good, who maybe is on a long-term undervalued contract, someone that we think can immediately help and contribute to the Grizzlies trying to compete for a title next season. So all of this, is stuff we've been saying, where this year, and maybe the best thing the Grizzlies did at the trade deadline this year was give themselves optionality going forward. I think, again, Zach Kleiman said that we're in a unique position and we have flexibility due to the draft. So we can either improve the team through the draft or through trades. And of course, the Grizzlies still hold all their own first-round picks going forward. So you could see another deal. Much like the Marcus Smart deal was them sending out first-round picks to bring in a player that was a win-now player. They can still do that. They can trade away future first-round picks. And, of course, they reloaded their cupboard of second-round picks, which had grown depleted over the years. They restocked that with the Steven Adams and with the Xavier Tillman trade. As far as other things that he said, this was super interesting, and maybe the most... I don't know, maybe this is the biggest news if you're a fantasy basketball player. He said that Marcus Smart and Desmond Bane have no timelines as far as their return. Of course, I've been tracking the dates of when we're supposed to get them back. Also, he didn't mention Jake LaRavia. I don't think anybody asked. Jake LaRavia was supposed to be reevaluated a week ago. I've heard nothing, but maybe other people have asked, and I just missed it when that news came out. So, we're still waiting for Jake LaRavia to return, but much more importantly, we're waiting on Desmond Bane and Marcus Smart, and based on the initial injury reports that were put out, where they said each guy would be reevaluated after 6 weeks, that time is expiring basically after the All-Star break. If you just track out the time from when they put out the press release saying they're going to be reevaluated in 6 weeks, Marcus Smart's reevaluation time was supposed to be February 22nd, which is right before the Grizzlies play their first game after the All-Star break, a February 23rd game against the Clippers. By the way, that's the Grizzlies watch party in Nashville. Come to Noble's Beer Hall. Let's hang out and just watch some basketball. Maybe it'll be low-stakes basketball. It'll be fun. I'll give you some prizes if you come. But Marcus was supposed to be reevaluated on the 22nd, and then Bane on the 25th. That's not that far away. That's only a few games away. But now Zach Kleiman's saying that there's no real timetable. He said there's no timetable for their return. He also said, which sort of contradicts that the Grizzlies would not consider the team record when clearing guys to play. So that makes it sound like, even if we are totally out of it, and even if we are sort of soft tanking, we're not going to consider that when we clear guys to play. So he also said they care about every single game they play. So those things, again, scream, we're not tanking. When Marcus and Dez are healthy, they will play. But he also said there's no timeline on their return. He also said some guys potentially might not come back. I think I heard that correctly. And maybe that's Brandon Clark. And again, maybe Brandon Clark plays this season. Maybe he doesn't. If you believe them face value that they don't care what the team record is when they're clearing guys to play basketball, well, then that sounds like, all right, Brandon Clark probably going to play this year. But also you have to be smart and judicious and be realistic about where you are. And, hey, it's really important that we stay, with a worse record than the Raptors or whoever it is in the tankathon standings. Maybe they won't bring those guys. So I think that's basically the whole summary of everything Zach Kleiman said in his 20-minute media availability. You can watch the whole thing on YouTube. Very convenient if you want to hear it. I mean, he was asked about, how does Zaire and Jake fit in future plans? What's the plan with Luke Kennard? And he said basically, he said Luke's an important part of the team. He cited the stats of Luke's net rating when he was playing in the playoffs last year. He said that, Zaire and Jake both have an opportunity to be a part of the team going forward. This is a big opportunity for them. Once those guys finally get healthy enough to play again, the end of the season, probably going to be important for those guys to showcase that they need to stick around. But again, what else was he going to say when pressed with those questions? So, all right. Now we can talk about this Hornets game. I said it felt like it had low stakes. Maybe that's subjective. But if I would point to one stat that I think maybe highlights that this game was not taken seriously by all the players who played in it, it would be that the Grizzlies shot 8 free throws in the game and the Hornets shot 7. I guess you could argue the officials were really letting them play. But 8 free throws for one team, 7 free throws for the other team, that is not a serious basketball game. That is 2 bad teams going through the motions. This was the first game in the NBA this year where both teams attempted 8 or fewer free throws. Just the second in Grizzlies franchise history where they took 8 or fewer free throws and so did their opponents. I mean, the Hornets shot 57% for this game. The Hornets, without LaMelo Ball, posted 33 assists. Vasily Micic, Davis Bertans, and Grant Williams lit up the Grizzlies. Grant Williams looked like the player the Mavericks hoped he would be when they signed him this offseason. They gave up on him and traded him for PJ Washington. This game, not very competitive. I mean, I love watching Vince Williams Jr. play. Gigi Jackson had a good game for him. Gigi Jackson made that finger roll from the free throw line that was absurd and incredible. That was the only highlight of the game. I mean, that was the one play of the game. We're like, well, that was cool. Everything else was just like, all right, Jaren's scoring. He's not really doing anything else. Santi threw a behind the back pass to Conchar. Jaren had 29 points in this game. He had 3 rebounds and 3 assists. He made 5 3-pointers. Jaren is the first player in NBA history, 6'10" or taller, to have consecutive games with 28 or more points and 3 or fewer rebounds. That is Keith's cherry pick stat of the day. Tallest player in NBA history to have consecutive games with 28 or more points or 3 or fewer rebounds. He's gone 6 straight games with 5 or fewer rebounds. I know I defend Jaren's lack of rebounding under the guise that he doesn't need to do that. It's not his role. He's been playing well. He's scoring the basketball incredibly well. He's just basically become Allen Houston. 25, 26 points every night, 2 or 3 assists, 2 or 3 rebounds. Like Conchar in this game, Conchar had 8 points, 10 rebounds, 4 steals, very impressive. Conchar now has 4 games this year with double-digit rebounds. Jaren has 3. That stat passes no judgment on anyone. It's merely meant to be amusing. But this game, there's not a lot I can even fake to talk about. I'm sorry. I know it's my job to talk about Grizzlies games. I have 0 opinions about this basketball game other than it did not seem serious. It seemed like the best pickup game you'll ever watch. It felt like a preseason game, an exhibition game. It felt sort of like Summer League. But there were just better players playing generally. I mean, if you forced me to talk about something, I guess I'm going to go back to praising Gigi Jackson, who we saw that diversification of him as a scorer. We saw him finishing in the paint off of rolls. We saw him making a couple of 3-pointers. That layup, amazing. Such good stuff. Derrick Rose and Luke Kennard played in this game. Did they have any impact on it whatsoever? I don't know. They both scored in double digits. They both posted 4 or more assists. They were fine. They were out there. They played basketball. As someone said in my Twitter mentions, that was a game that occurred. Correct. There were fans there. The referees came. Most of the guys who we knew their names suited up. Some guys who we didn't know their names, they also suited up. Jacob Gilyard started this game. Scottie Pippen Jr. was inactive. They just chose not to use Scottie Pippen Jr. in this game. The Gilyard thing is interesting because Gilyard is running out of games. He's running out of games he can play on this 2-way deal. I don't know what the plan is for Gilyard. I would be pretty shocked if they gave him a regular contract. I don't know what the upside is. I mean, you could just waive Lamar Stevens. Lamar Stevens was available. Yuta Watanabe was available. Neither one of those new players for the Grizzlies played in this one. I don't know what the benefit is to signing Gilyard to a regular deal. I don't know what their plans are for him in the future. I feel like with Scottie Pippen Jr., you're good. You give Gilyard a pat on the back, you shake his hand, you say, hey, man, you played great. he exceeded my expectations for him this year. He showed he can hang in the NBA. I don't know if he gets a guaranteed contract for anybody next year. Like, is he going to be a regular roster player in the NBA next season? I would bet against it, but he's proven me wrong before. So maybe he does get one of those spots on one of the 30 NBA teams. I think more than likely he ends up being just like a 10-day fill-in guy, next season. And if he decides that's good enough for him for his basketball career before choosing to go overseas or something. I'm looking through my notes now, desperate for something to talk about. Oh, I guess we could point out Vince Williams Jr. tied his career high with 8 assists for the second straight game. So Vince being asked to do, of course, a lot of the play creation, a lot of the ball handling. I'm looking forward. All right. The Grizzlies play on Monday night. They host the Pelicans. They actually start a 5-game homestand that carries through the All-Star break. They don't have to go for a road game until the end of the month, February 28th against the Timberwolves. So, you get to settle in, get comfortable at home, maybe, get some practices in. Again, I don't know what the stakes are anymore. I mean, obviously, we have to keep an eye on the fact about how our draft pick is going to end up. You want to use this time, I think, to get a better grasp on Zaire Williams and Jake LaRavia. Maybe you want to actually see Lamar Stevens or Yuta Watanabe play basketball. I don't really know. Personally, I believe it would be good to bring back Desmond Bane and to bring back Marcus Smart so Desmond and Marcus can play with Vince and can play with Gigi Jackson and those guys. I feel like Gigi Jackson playing alongside Desmond Bane and Marcus Smart is going to make him better this year. This season's over. Don't risk your guys, for injury. They're basketball players. I mean, they play basketball. It is what it is. I don't necessarily feel like you just shut a guy down totally who's healthy. Like, let's just play basketball. I mean, maybe in exceptions like Brandon Clark. Like, if you're returning from an Achilles injury, okay, maybe you don't need to play. But everybody else, it's basketball. Let's see what you look like alongside our young guys. Let's help our young guys develop and see what they have playing against and learning from, some of our better players. But again, going back to, there are no timetables for anyone, or there are no timetables for Marcus and Desmond that Kleiman said. Maybe, those guys won't play. Last thing, I guess, as I give up my attempts to have this episode reach 25 minutes. The Grizzlies, of course, before the trade deadline were rumored to be pursuing Killian Hayes. He is, in fact, a free agent right now. He got waived. So, if the Grizzlies do want to waive Lamar Stevens, who has no money guaranteed to him next year, they could actually waive Lamar Stevens and, bring in one of these buyout guys. A lot of Grizzlies fans have had their eye on Joe Harris for years. He's available. You look at Killian Hayes. Do you want to try out Killian Hayes? Maybe you could do it. This is your opportunity. I don't know what the odds are. I don't know if there's any veracity to that report that the Grizzlies were pursuing Killian Hayes, but you certainly could, but I wouldn't bet on it. Anyways, I appreciate all you guys listening. If you want to join that Slack community, join my Patreon and get some bonus content, do that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. Hope you guys have a great Monday. I'll talk to you soon. Go Grizz.